This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV. Yes, I am.
One step more. One step more. One step more. Until you reach your goals. One step more. Save them soul. One step more. One step more. How good it is to reach the
Live for Love TV. This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV.
Welcome back to Live for Love TV, the 25th day of the 5th month of the 21st year of the 21st century. I surely hope everyone's doing well out there. Today we're going to move on from where we were with the last video on whether a white person could be a Rasta. Now we're going to talk about the actual Rasta movement, started in 1930 or 31-ish in Jamaica, and Tafari Mekanin, and how there may be a confusion between some people who don't understand their history. So let's do a quick synopsis of what happened. We're going to give you 3 names you obviously need to check out for yourself if you're not happy with some of the things that I'm going to say today. Emperor Haile Selassie, he was born in 1892. Marcus Messiah Garvey was born in 1887. And Leonard P. Howell was born in 1898. These are the 3 power names, the 3 temples that you're going to have to look at when you look at the Rastafari movement in Jamaica. In 1927, Marcus Messiah Garvey, as many people will know, was deported out of America after spending 2 or 3 years in prison, and came back to Jamaica, where he set up his political party, which didn't do too well. But in those few years that he was there, a very highly studied man, well-researched man, well-read man, he recognized that Emperor Haile Selassie was going to be crowned with Rastafari, to be correct, crowned Emperor Haile Selassie in 1930. So on the eve of that time, he pointed to the Black people around the world, both in America and everywhere else, in Jamaica and around the world, to stop looking at the kings and queens of Europe and look towards our own king, which is about to be crowned in Ethiopia in 1930. So that was the point why some Rastas will call him John Marcus, as in John the Baptist. So he points towards the throne of Ethiopia, and people start to take on and watch the coronation. This is done in America. A lot of people in America knew about this. A lot of people, obviously, in Jamaica. Now we move on, because I'm going to jump back and forward a little bit, because in 1966, the Emperor Haile Selassie comes to Jamaica. And when he comes to Jamaica, if you can see, the 21st of April, 1966, when he comes to Jamaica, you can see footage of the crowd and what you could call the bedlam that was there, the furore that was there. It was such a massive crowd, and such a crowd that broke through the barriers, that Emperor Haile Selassie wasn't actually able to come off the plane immediately. Till later on, we know the story, Mortimer Panna went on there and helped to get him to be able to basically part in the Red Sea, and it was able to get him off the plane and into Jamaica. Now, in his time in Jamaica, he was very, very touched by the Jamaicans' feelings towards him and Ethiopia. He never separated himself from Ethiopia. So whenever you showed respect towards Emperor Haile Selassie, you were sending respects towards Ethiopia, the land in which he hails from. So he was very, very touched by that. But he himself says later, when he goes back to Ethiopia, that the Rasta movement in Jamaica have misunderstood him, and they've misunderstood the history of Ethiopia, misunderstood the way Ethiopia is set up and how it was run. So he commissions a man by the name of Ubuna Yeshak. I think I've got his name right. I hope I haven't butchered his name too much. He commissions him to set up the Ethiopian Orthodox Church in 1970 in Jamaica. I believe this may be the first Ethiopian Orthodox Church outside of Ethiopia at that time, but there are many, many now since that date. And he makes it clear to his emissary that he wants the people of Jamaica to understand the true Ethiopian Orthodox Christian religion, because people were saying he was divine, Rastas were saying he was divine in Jamaica, and he's always denied that, completely and utterly denied that, and said no man should see him as divine. So when the church was set up in 1970, there became a big problem between those on the ground and those who were, on the ground in Jamaica and those who were coming from Ethiopia. Because in order to be part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, you needed to be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. And many of the Rastas wanted to be baptized in the name of Emperor Haile Selassie. So there became a big, big problem there. Now I go back to Leonard P. Howell. Like I say, I'm jumping back. He comes back to Jamaica after a trip abroad in 1932. He's seen the crowning. He's heard Marcus Garvey said. He comes back in 1932 and he starts to preach that Emperor Haile Selassie is divine. He's the return of the Jesus Christ, of the Messiah. He's basically the Messiah, the Black Messiah, come back to redeem his people. So this is what is taught at the beginning of Rasta. He's not the only one to do this. There are some other men alongside him. I'm not going to name them. You can look those guys up, those people up yourself. But he is the main person that people talk about, Leonard P. Howell. Now, Leonard P. Howell is a real fighter for justice. He was completely anti-colonial. He didn't want anything to do with the crown, the colonial crown, didn't want anything to do with white supremacy, rightfully said. And so he constantly spoke against those people. So in Jamaica, he was enemy number one. There's absolutely no doubt about that. In 1931, going forward, he would be enemy number one in Jamaica. The upper class, the political class, the money people, the unions, you name it, almost everybody except the poor and needy who he stood up for was against him. So he tied that together with his belief in Rastafari being the divine coming to earth of the Black Messiah. Now it comes, as I said, but because I described later on what happens in 1970, you see, between 1932 and 1966, the Rasta movement grows in Jamaica. And that Rasta movement is growing under Leonard P. Howell's direction, which believes that Emperor Haile Selassie is the Messiah, that he is divine. So when, as I said earlier, when he comes and sees this, though he's happy with the respect that he gets, he doesn't like the way that Rasta is actually looking towards him instead of looking towards Christ as he does and as the Ethiopian people do. So the split starts to come. And this is where I was saying earlier on, some people, when they talk about Rasta, they use the name Tafari Mekanin, but they don't actually follow his teachings. And this is where you're going to get people making statements in somebody else's name, but with their own belief system, which I think is wrong. You can believe anything you want, you can say anything you want, but you do need to stick to, if you're using the name of any group, any person, any man, any group, you have to use that group's doctrine, that group's way of doing things. To do your own and use somebody's name, I think that's disingenuous, and that's where a problem comes. A lot of people not being able to understand Rastafari as it should be, not as it has been adopted by some people. So this is what happens. This is the split in 1970, and it even runs right into the great Bob Marley, because it's said that Bob Marley, who we all know as a Rasta, part of the Rasta movement from back a while, learned everything that he needed to learn from the people of Jamaica. But later on, it's said that before he died, he joined the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and he was baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. Some people doubt this. Tommy Cowan and very many people said this is absolutely true. In fact, when he was buried, you'll see Ethiopian Orthodox Church people there helping to carry out the ceremony. So there must be some truth in it somewhere. Now, if he did do this, why was it not widely known? Why did he wait so long before he did it? Maybe he realized that the people in the country from which he was born and which he hailed from and was respected so highly may turn against him. The Rastas in that country particularly may turn against him, since they did not want to be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. But this is a big rift in between the Ethiopian understanding of Emperor Haile Selassie and the Jamaican Rastas understanding of Emperor Haile Selassie. You have some people who tell you, well, I used to hear it when I was young. Well, he came to his own, but they knew him not. That's a strange thing to say. I think they're trying to refer to Jesus Christ there, where it talks about people like the disciples and people not recognizing who he was. But the problem is that Emperor Haile Selassie himself says he's not divine. He tells himself that he should not be seen as a god, or any man should be seen as a god. So there comes a problem there. It's not that he came to his own and they knew him not. You'll be saying that he knew himself not. and you can't make that statement about Rastafari making an Emperor Haile Selassie. So we're just going over a few things that we remember from memory. Leonard P. Howell he was, maligned in Jamaica and treated so badly, set in and out of prison, eventually into a mental institution. He came in and he went out, he came in and he went out. And in 1966, he was behind that big amount of Rastas that you saw at the airport, but yet he was unable to be there for whatever reason. That's one of the saddest things about the story that I'm saying today. He died in 1981. Marcus Garvey was the first one to point in Jamaica towards Emperor Haile Selassie and his coronation, died in 1940. And we're told Emperor Haile Selassie, we are told, we've never seen anybody, died in the 27th of the 8th, 1975. These are the things, that's why I said these are the three names you need to understand, and the history you need to understand about Rasta, the Rasta movement, how it became what it was in Jamaica, and where the rift is, and not just was, where the rift still is to this day between certain Ethiopians who revere Emperor Haile Selassie and those who outside say he's actually divine and he's a god. So I hope that enlightens some of you who didn't know that. Any of these names you can go and look up. All this is in the public domain. I'm not saying anything from my own mindset. This is all there to be seen. I know that I've given you facts, and I've also given you some interpretation of some of those facts. So you can interpret how you want, but just remember that there is no such thing as a fact that doesn't take interpretation. A fact is just a thing, but it needs interpretation. So I have interpreted it. And if I've interpreted it wrong, you can leave it in the comments. If you disagree, if you like, if you're up or down, it doesn't make any difference. Just do your thing and let people see it. Live for Love TV. See you back.